So hello everyone and welcome to another conversation of the second cycle of conversations on corporeal architecture, our last conversation for this cycle. And today I am very glad and honored to have as guests Raquel Guerra Aragonés. Raquel Guerra Aragonés is an interdisciplinary architect, researcher, and musician. She studied architecture at UPM Spain and met two universities in Turkey, and piano through Guildhall School of Music and Drama program. She collaborates on research projects on resilience and sustainability. She is a fellow of the Center for Conscious Design with interest in biophilia and neurodiversity inclusion. She researches on neuroscience and cross-modal experiences in creative processes through music, dance, space, and visual arts. She focuses on synesthesia and zebra individuals. Raquel, thank you so much for accepting this invitation.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I'm very happy to share this evening with all of you and my research. I am an independent researcher, so what I'm going to show you is like kind of self-touch research. The topic of my presentation, I'm going to share my screen. With, one moment, I share. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so let's start. So I'm going to share with you a neurodiverse journey through architectural and music multisensory experiences. This is like my main topic of research. So I would like to highlight like the main topics or interests that I have in this research. So on the one hand, I try to explore neuroarchitecture and psychology in architecture through space, buildings, landscape, sensory intuition, movement, and also through neuromusicology. So the aim is to find connections between the architectural experience and music, because as musician, architect, and researcher, I think that we have an important role in people well-being. So that is why I also research on neuroscience. I think that time and memories are also related with all these topics. So I'm going also to explain in this presentation that relation between aesthetics, beauty, and the interdisciplinary arts, and also a particular neurological condition applied to this research, that is zebra individuals, because I am one of them. So I would like to highlight also neurodiversity. So let's start with neuroarchitecture, psychology, architecture, and beauty. So as an introduction, maybe all the students know that parallelism between all the Vitruvian triad and architectural design and aesthetic experience, although unfortunately at university, we are not taught about the aesthetic experience in terms of neural terms. So as a review, the aesthetic experience, we have aspects about knowledge, meaning, sensory, motor, and emotion evaluation. I would like to start with this kind of workshop where I will share an architectural project that is quite multisensory, and it's going to be related with the emotions or sensations that we have with music. So I recommend you first to listen. I don't know if this is going to work, so let me know. I'm going to play some music. Tell me if you can listen. Can you listen?
No.
Can you listen? No?
No, not yet.
No? Okay. So this is going to be, if I share in the chat, then how can I share my...
I think you have to leave the presentation and write in the chat.
Okay. So if I share now the video, maybe you can listen. Yes. Can you listen?
There's no sound, but we can see it.
Okay, so the problem is the sound. That it's important to listen to the sound. Okay, I share in the chat and maybe you can. So while I play the presentation, you can, if you have headphones, maybe you can listen.
Okay.
So I can.
Maybe I'll just ask everyone to have.
Sorry?
To have the microphones off so that we don't hear each other's YouTube sound. And Raquel, you will continue with your presentation while we listen.
Yeah. I will go on.
Okay.
Yes, because it's a pity that we cannot do it at the same time. So I go on with the presentation.
Okay, I will just mute my microphone so that nobody hears my.
Okay, so I visited this project in Japan, this Hiroshi Senju Museum from here in Nishizawa. So the musical memories that I had were the ones that you are listening. It's not about the video of YouTube, it's what you are listening. So I think that this project is important because you feel inside and outside, and you feel your body and your mind in between, indoors and outdoors. So I think that these kind of strategies that Nishizawa, other Japanese, or Katsuyo Seijima use is quite interesting for neuroarchitecture. This kind of openness, and also the how you move inside the building. It's quite interesting. The topography is not like plain, so it is like you are climbing. This is the kind of experiences that you can feel with the transparency. All the time the emphasis is the movement. You can see what I meant about the section that you can not climb, but go up and go down. So the topography is quite important. So you can stop with the YouTube. And this is one question about, during my presentation, I would like also to ask all of you this kind of questions, and maybe after that after my presentation, we can speak about your opinion. So what do you feel? Do you feel music when you walk through a building? So I hope that after presentation, you could share an example. This is another like astonished project for me where I listen music is from Tada Ando Naoshima Art Museum. The next part of my presentation is about neuromusicology. So I explore space, sounds, silence, nature, sensory intuition, and again, the body that is related with the movement. Sorry, because I'm not a neuroscientist, so all my research is quite intuitive, and I would like to share some references that I'm now researching. So John Kenston explores about mainly electronic music. So what is interesting for me is this diagram that you can see. As I don't know if I have said in the beginning, I am a piano improvisation musician. So that is why these kind of processes are quite important for me, and how Kenston analyzes, I think, could open a new line of research for me. So as you can see, he describes a relation between the improvisation process, the sound synthesis, phonomesis, and everything connected with the performance, where you have experimentation, the imagination, take part, and random processes also appear. So I can read more or less his thesis. He says that an audiovisual score can be a useful tool to connect improvising musicians to each other and their audience through the insertion of a mediating audiovisual layer within the work. So what John Kenston wants is just not to write in a kind of paper or just all the notes or the sheet. He's also he also do in experimentation with audiovisual processes, not like mine because it's electronic music, but I think it has quite relation. So these systems are used as primarily information agent for an example of improvisers, providing them with a context for a musical conversation. That is why he uses these audiovisual layers. What I mean were scores. Sorry that my English is not perfect. So this is what I mean, that it's not only graphic scores, he's using the audiovisual score as a bridge between among musicians. So this creative cycle is an example of improvisation. Improvisation is a way for musicians to realize the music they are imagining as they imagine it. However, this is not a purely individual creative process like any other art form. Thousands of influencing factors are involved. For instance, your own experience, your own memories, your own state or mood. For a soloist, the influences include individual life experiences. So that is my case because I don't do like ensembles. So something that was curious to me, or what I'm researching now, is about phonomnesis. So those sonic mnemonic effects that creates the sonic memories. So there are like two, anamnesis and phonomnesis. So I wanted to research which of them are related with my work. So anamnesis is the effect of a sound triggering a memory of another sonic time and place. It's like an involuntary revival of memory. For example, if we think about landscape architecture and we see like lake or water, maybe this keeps or this may come back some memories from our past related with water or other things. About phonomesis, it's the effect of mentally produced sounds conjuring up imagined experiences internal, that is like our internal listening. About my case, I felt that none of them were related because when I play the piano, I do improvisation. I don't have like a previous sonic image in my mind. So I am now researching on in research of Lost Time of Marcel Proust, and I would like to read some of the like comments that have impacted me from this author. He said that Marcel Proust set an entire universe of past times in an architectural environment that seems to have the sensual impact of a picture and is portrayed so vividly that it appears as a system of rooms of memory. This is more or less what I feel when I do improvisation, or also when I draw. A similar experience could be with music. This is what I'm researching. This author also says that just as music causes extensive memory systems to create it in the human brain, spaces and the times experiencing them have an even clearer effect as a memory system, depending on the strength of the positive stimuli, which usually go back to early childhood. Experiences of sound and space remain in the memory for the same length of time as the taste of a favorite food. So now it's your turn. So more questions. So about these sonic mnemonic effects and your own sonic memories related with architecture and music, how can architecture play with sonic mnemonic effects to trigger sonic memories? Now I'm going to share another link. So it is just an exercise, so you can, yes. I'm going to share in the chat. So we can listen just.
It's also to have as a soundscape, like we did the other time.
Yes, just if you can listen the first, like 30 seconds. So it is in the chat.
The unimaginable situation.
Sorry.
So maybe we can hear you. Maybe you can play it because I hear your Maria. Would you mind to play it because I have heard what you do?
Yes, I will. I was muted and I didn't.
Maybe I can do it. Can you hear mine?
Very, very vague. Very vague. I will just. There's an advertising, so I will just wait a little and then I put it for everyone.
Can you hear now? No.
No, we can't hear it. I will try with mine.
Okay, so just try because everything is music.
I will put mine now.
Okay. Which one is? more or less. Well, we cannot hear, no problem.
You can't hear it?
Yes, but it is like cut, the sound. Well, so maybe you can see, you can enjoy the music later. So, well, the idea of this exercise is like you are going to listen some electronic sounds. So this is going to take you to kind of sonic memories that comes to, for example, in my case, these are the memories that they have when I listen that piece of music. So it is the memory of Shinrin-yoku. In Japanese, this means like forest and bath. So this means that bathing in the forest atmosphere or taking the forest through our senses, it is simply being in nature, connecting with it through our senses of sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. So this was an example of how music could create this kind of multisensory experiences. We have another example, so if we cannot listen in, I will share the links afterwards. So another question is that at the end, maybe we can share a piece of music or architectural project where you can share your sonic memories. So now it's the term of the brain, of my brain in particular, I'm going to speak about neurodiversity, synesthesia, and zebra individuals. Have you ever met a zebra individual? Maybe looking back to history, Nikola Tesla probably was one. But are zebra individuals exclusively genius in history then? So no, it's not a must to be a genius. Just zebras are people that only have a different brain structure or brain performance compared with normal thinkers. That's all. And maybe if you look around you, you can find one of them, because we are less than the 5% of the population, but we exist. I am one of them. So now I would like to explain a bit about this neurological condition. I research about it because this is the structure of my brain, and there's very, very little research about that. So zebra individuals are mental super efficient people. So this is probably the first time that you have heard of zebra individuals. What is even more likely is that you have come across more than one during your life without being aware of it. Think of that isolated colleague who didn't fit into any mold, the one who thought too much and have no middle ground. So zebra, as I have already explained, are a very small minority group, so less than the 5% of the population, with a mental superefficiency, high potential, or an atypical neurological profile. Generally, they are described as people with natural abilities or skills significantly superior to those of the average population in various fields, like intellectual, creative, artistic, athletic, maybe not all of them. And if the politically correct ideal of the brilliant student now comes across your mind, it is because we are not brilliant, exactly. So that is not the profile of a gifted person, what I mean about brilliant. This is what we are required at universities, and that is why we have so many problems to be inside or adapted in the systems. So zebras are not usually people who can easily adapt to systems and take advantage of them. These individuals constitute a little known branch of giftedness. However, as you can see in the screen, as giftedness is still a taboo, because if you speak about gifted, people look at you as if you were an arrogant. So sometimes usually, unfortunately, we are treated at schools, at universities, as disabled people, abnormal, as if we had mental sickness, and everything is because we have a different neurological structure or maybe performance. I'm not a neurologist, so I have to be careful to explain it. What I have researched until the moment is that our tonsil and our hypothalamus works in a different way. So that means that we have quite a typical personality. Some of us has a strong emotional intelligence. So there is some discussion between EQ and IQ because there's no way to exactly measure when you are zebra or not. So it's more about personality. So in our daily lives, we are often treated, as I have said, as disabled, abnormal, or mentally ill, since their intelligence is usually understood and measured exclusively with parameters applied to normal thinking people or normal thinkers. So I usually think, I don't know you, is if you have ever wondered exactly what it means to be normal, whether what is considered normal by the majority is the best for the individual and the collective. I think that this is one of the questions that many people with neurodiverse profiles usually ask ourselves. So according to Gartner, the human beings have 9 different types of intelligence. So that reflect different ways of interacting with the world, and each person is a unique combination. So all of us has this combination. So what happens with zero individuals? This is like our great potential, because the way in which our intelligences are combined are different, and this is what triggers our neurological processes, very close or linked with multidisciplinary transversality. So this is what I want to share here. For example, arborescent thinking structures. So this is a quickly and conscious explore where we explore many lines of thought simultaneously and in parallel, from hyperlogic to creativity. Synesthesia is not only related with zebras or gifted people. You know that it's the stimulation of one sensory or cognitive pathway leads to involuntary experiences in a second sensory or cognitive pathway. But it seems that zebra could have different types of combination of synesthesia. Another phenomenon, or I don't know how to call it, that we experience is hyperesthesia, that this is a sensory acuity that affects one or more of the 5 human senses. For example, in my case, it's like I have like a strong sensitivity to sound. So this means like I can hear on the same level like 4 or 5 sounds. So imagine when you are outside or in a crowded place, what this means. So to finish with what I was saying, yes, about zebra individuals. So I have already spoken about multiple intelligences. One question is why at universities or at schools we don't, how can I say, develop strategies for education according with these multiple intelligences, not only logic or mathematics. We have a lot, also many people are kinesthetic. So I think that this is a quite interesting field to research in education. And about synesthesia, just a reference, so the different types of synesthesia that we can experience. In my case, it's quite related with sounds. So another question for you, what does it mean to be normal, or how can we create neurodiverse environments and cities to foster creativity and well-being? And the second one, why do you think that most of the gifted people quit university and are self-taught? Something that I wonder, does history repeat itself, and why? And the last part is about my work, but as we cannot listen, I don't know how I'm going to explain it. So my audiovisual work tried to combine all this knowledge by intuition. Now I'm starting with theory myself, that I think that it's quite important. So what I do is ephemeral piano improvisations. So what I want to research is that cross-modal experiences in creative processes, architecture, space, landscape, visual arts, dance. And I want to understand what happens in my brain, and also in psychological terms, adapted to zero individuals, again, because that is the structure of my brain. So from these multisensorial experiences to the synesthetic methods, I think that this kind of research, or instead of calling research, if we can develop these tools ourselves, like cross-modal strategies, is quite important to develop transversality among the creative process of different arts, and this is quite related, I think, with architecture. I think that it is also very important as a tool to recover from creative blocks, so these interdisciplinary methods among the arts, dance, music, and also it's important to awake curiosity in unexpected ways. I think that curiosity is quite related with self and critique and with resilience. I mean, so I think that's our cities sometimes don't, or usually don't awake that curiosity, and we feel like machines without time or without effort to think by ourselves about what is happening or what we can change in our lives, society, world. So at the end, my work wants to encourage everybody to build empathy and mental well-being, to go beyond those shallow layers to discover the genuine natural landscape that everybody keeps inside. So I'm going to share another link, and maybe later I'm going to explain first about how is my research. Can you listen? No.
No.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it. Here you have another. But first, I'm going to come back to my presentation.
So we should open the link to have with your presentation again.
Well, I think I'm going to speak first about my research, like in general about audiovisual and so on, and then we can come back here. So as Maria has introduced me, as an independent researcher, my main focus is on the synesthetic methods of civil individuals. And why do I research about this? Because I do believe that the creative processes are pretty similar in the arts, music, dance, or architecture in the beginning stages. So that is why this is the aim of this work. So from these analogies, I think that the skills of an architect could be improved. And this transversality among the creative processes of different arts is one of the best tools to recover, as I have said, from the creative blocks and all the awakening curiosity that we want to, or we need to create architecture or other arts. So now I want to share some experimental audiovisual works where I explore the inner process of some piano improvisation. So first I would like to explain what I understand as a piano improvisation. So it's a piece of music that is not planned or whose composition is not written in advance. So it is similar experience to automatic writing. It is more an unconscious process where I connect with my inner environment. So it is amusing because I know in advance neither what I'm going to play, nor feel, nor the memories I will connect with. Hence, that music draft is quite ephemeral, as I cannot remember what I have played after performing. Instead, I feel different emotions and changes of moods while performing. And maybe this is mainly the final taste that I get from the performing. So now let's you can click in the link, you can listen. So this is called Bridge Forest, and this is like a personal reflection on climate change and its impact on biodiversity. So I think that nature, forest, ecosystems will be merry remembrance in future. What about the non-visual experiences that I experienced while I was playing? Maybe you cannot listen, but I want to show you like the sequence. So how the images changes. So maybe you can listen and we can listen. Okay. So maybe you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, you cannot listen. But this is how I work by layers and how you can discover afterwards a landscape through the experiences or tactile experiences that I feel while playing. So this is like the evolution. So this is what I mean, that at the end, our forest will disappear. So maybe at the end will be a kind of landscape in our memories. Okay, so I come back now to my presentation. Okay, so I don't know what I'm sharing. Am I sharing my presentation?
Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay, sorry for that. So, well, so I will go fast because as we cannot listen. So here, what I experienced was the touch of snow, the roughness of the tree trunks, and a kind of taste of rusty steel. So this is the memory that I think that we'll have in future about our forest if we don't do anything. And while I was playing, I also see the range of colors that I have shown you. Another audiovisual work is called Pamukkale, Salt Mountains. So it is a sequence of landscape from sand and water to salt mountains. And at the end, it was a memory that I have about Turkey when I was living there, because I couldn't do that trip. So the landscape that appears in my memory were in places where I wasn't being there. So about the non-visual experiences that I experienced while I was playing, was kind of salty taste, sand and salt in the hands, velvety surfaces like roses, petals, and also water and waves through the body. I can share the link afterwards. So this is like the final landscape. So it's a pity because we cannot see like all the evolution. Another work, and only 3 more, so I will finish maybe in 5 or 6 slides. It's another journey. It is called Across a City of Numbers. So it's a labyrinth of nameless streets and squares configured by the movement of numbers on a textile canvas. So this is, I started to play, and this is what started to happen in my mind. So this imaginary city started from kind of a smoke and roughness that I felt. So this canvas, textile canvas that I felt in my hands were like brown. And finally, I got to this kind of green cities. I usually experience, I don't know if this is called synesthesia or not, but when I have to do draft or in that first stage of the design process in architecture, I need to do this kind of schemes that with numbers that help me to think, although it's not related with the projects. Another project or audiovisual work is related with the moon. So I try to explore, or that is what I felt like, different states of the surface or the topography of the moon, and I felt that it was quite related with, I mean, what I was feeling while playing. So different ranges of brightness, the topography in the hands. I felt like aroma of violets and lilies. So this is like an analogy of my inner weather and the images that I have. So this is quite related with the ranges of colors that you can see in the videos. This is like the first slide and the second and the final slide of the video. So this is a softer transition. Another one is related with literature. You know, the Aleph from Borges. So I was quite, I don't know if the word is impacted, but when I read this paragraph, I saw a small iridescent sphere of almost intolerable bright lines. At first I thought it was spinning, then I understood that this improvement was an illusion produced by the vertiginous spectacles it contained. So from this chapter, I experienced what you can see in this video. So that concentration of time, mass, space in a sphere. So again, in the video, you can see the transition of colors, not like this, that is quite frag, and how I felt that massive spheres. What I felt was a kind of aroma of moisture, wet hands, and the taste of or touch of moss, also a combination of silence, whisper of leaves, and also thermal experience like cold and warm, depending on the transition dark light colors that I was seeing in my mind. I speak about colors, I speak about textures, I speak about tactile, thermal, and so on. As I told you, as a several lines of thought at the same time. I don't know if normal thinkers also feel it when they play it, but when I play the piano, I feel like all that division. So I can see like tests, I can see images, I can see ranges of colors, symbols, and everything at the same time. I don't know if piano, as it is an automatic kind of automatic activity, facilitates this kind of concentration or like being in the flow. I don't know how to explain it. And this is the final one, I think. This is coming back from Siberia. I call it like that. So all the video is a transition of colors between the sky and the reflection in the water with a permanent landscape of these snowing mountains. This journey, what represents is like that kind of infinite linear corridor of a hospital. So it is like filling in a kind of linear fish tank. It's a kind of anachronistic situation. You are in the same place, but you at the same time feel the passage of time. So this is what this video reflects, the emotional state and moods. And this is reflected through ranges of colors. What do I feel? What did I feel as non-visual experiences? So mainly the sensations were related with the weather. So I feel icy wind, like wind chills at the same time, and also like touch of ice in my hands. So that is why at the end the video is like it is, these images. So I create these videos or these audiovisual works from these non-visual experiences. At the same time, for me, it was like a memory reset, like being inside that landscape, and you don't have any other memories. You just only can see the sky, the range of colors in the sky. So, and finally, I felt like a kind of disinfectant aroma. So this is how I work in these audiovisual works. I think that it's a pity that at the schools of architecture we don't think about this kind of multisensory processes. Maybe my method is not the best one. It is quite experimental and quite initial, but I think that if we could do this in architectural projects, for example, in those first stages of the process, I think that it could help to develop the main idea of a project. So I'm thinking in that phase where you can imagine and you are not thinking about engineering and so on. So finally, these are the references that I have explored in this presentation. And I would like to thank you, of course, Tatiana Berger and Maria for the chance of being here, and other people that you can see in my presentation. So I hope it's not too late. So thanks for listening, and I come back to the conversation.
Not at all late, Raquel, and thank you so much for this really beautiful.
Sorry that I couldn't share. I mean, I have videos of 1-2 minutes, like 4 or 5, but I didn't.
No problem. You sent us the links before, so I will share them with the students so that we can also see them in all calm and also really just enjoy the trip, because I think that they are very exploratory and very immersive, and I am very happy and grateful that you come here and experience and share these experiments and your experience with your work. And I also find it I'm really happy, and I think it's so important that we have a conversation with someone who talks also from a perspective of neurodiversity. This is also something that I'm very interested in, and I didn't know the category of zebra individual, but I could relate to many things that you were talking about. Also the difficulties of being someone gifted, and the difficulties that someone who is gifted can have while studying in a normal school and in a normal university. And I think that this is something that we should definitely talk about much more often in terms of education. And also that I think that many people who go to study architecture might even have some of these characteristics, but the way that we are teaching architecture encourages people to suppress this kind of sensibility, and we should definitely encourage this. I found it very interesting that you showed in one of your slides also one of these diagrams where alphabet was connected to colors and to tastes and sounds. So all these different interconnectedness of different sensory modalities and also modes of thinking. And I again had to think about the work at the Bauhaus, like Johannes Itten, for example. He was doing these exercises where students were doing hand models and thinking about sound and thinking about color. And also we know that Kandinsky was synesthetic. So there is so much to learn from this way of exploring creativity from this very open perspective. So I would like to ask you, how did you discover the zebra as a category, if we could call it like that?
I have been researching all my life because I mean, when I was at school, my parents didn't tell me that I was gifted. I don't know why, but there was something different in me. And like 1 year ago, I had like accident and some personal incident, and the doctors told me that my way of processing was quite different. So I started to connect all the problems that I had at university. So, for example, we connect everything. So when you, it's curious because when you architecture at the end, it's a connection of, I mean, section, elevations, and so on. This is on the plan, but it's also about many disciplines. So it makes no sense that once you started, you have to divide in rooms all the knowledge. So these were some of the difficulties that I found. So I started to research about gifted people because something that I have read is that gifted people don't know that they are, because they think that you have to be pointed out, how can I say, since you are very little and you have to go to a school of gifted people. No, the structure of your brain is like it is. So I experience all the time, for example, with the words, sometimes I move the letters. So sometimes for me, it could be difficult not to speak. I have learned like 6 or 7 languages, but sometimes I'm not able to speak it. So it is like very intuitive. So this is how I started to research, and I found one book, one researcher in France. She's called Petit Colin. She's a psychologist, and she explained that all that mental, how can I say, deficiencies that we are told during our life, like hyperactivity or dissociations, or this something that all the time tells you that you are different. It's because you are sick. It's not. It's because the connections are very fast. So what happens, for example, to zebras is that we don't have middle point. So it goes from very creative to very hyperlucidity, for example. So we don't see the middle stages. Our memory is also different. For example, the short-term memory. So that is why we have problems at school. Our memory is quite big, but it's arborescent, and it's not in this, I mean, in the moment. So I can read a book very fast, but I cannot remember what I have read in just maybe in 1 week. I will remember it, but not in the moment. So that is why
information is being processed on a very deep level.
Yeah, and for all that connection. So this is how more or less I knew, because I mean by chance, because the doctors didn't know that I was. I mean, they were neurologists, but they told me this is not normal. And then I connected all the pieces of the puzzle, and this is how I knew.
I find it also very interesting because you showed your experiments with this kind of audiovisual work, and actually our students here from the seminar we are doing, they have this task of also of connecting body movement and interpreting through a kind of performative choreography some of their rituals of daily life, and also to represent this kind of emotional landscape by connecting them to sounds, also to the idea of sound. So I really think your presentation could bring a lot of interesting input, also to show that sometimes we think that the creative process has to be something very structured and very organized. And if we also release some of these preconceived ideas, we can understand that creativity can be something very fluid, that can be developed not only through planning, but also through doing, through discovering. So this very fluid and flexible experience. And
I think that the important point is the mood. I mean that these processes, performative arts, dance, music, or even sports, change your mood. I mean, and I think that the point where you are in your brain, I feel when I'm very, very, very in the left side or in the right side. So it helps me to start with this kind of fluid work. For example, when you feel block or creative blocks, I think that these processes help you. It doesn't mean that itself the work that you are going to do is going to be the architectural project or the final product. I think this is how I use this kind of exercises. Maybe it's very personal or private, but I think that it is something that the students shouldn't lose after leaving the architectural school. So when you are in a studio, because it seems that you don't have time for anything, and it's very important to liberate, I don't know how to say, to get free with these kind of processes.
Exactly, Raquel. That's also why we are doing here in this course. We are also doing body training, and I always say that this is a way to connect to the inner landscape. Because if we don't lose touch to the inner landscape, if we know what's happening in the body, what's happening, what visions do I have, how do I feel it, how do I experience it, whatever way it happens, because everyone experiences it differently, we will be more empathic with the users of our projects, because we understand that everybody has an ever-evolving landscape. And I very often say that, because now we talk, of course, about neurodiversity, and we know that some people are definitely wired differently than others, but I also like to challenge the whole concept of normality, because I have met in my life many people who I could also say on a first meeting, oh, this is a very normal person, but then as you get to know, everybody has something that you would say more special in this direction or this or that. So I really think that in terms of education and the whole way that we are also used to classifying people and how the brain works and many things, that this will definitely change. I think that a lot of us have brains also that maybe have been sculpted through going through very rigid education systems that are not so focused on creativity, but more with an emphasis on discipline and results and not so much on process. And not everybody who maybe is more gifted has a chance to have had also a complementary education with music or performance, or just, you know, enough free time or enough free space to play, which is the best way to learn. So I think it's very interesting that we also have a chance to talk about these things. And I would like to invite Milton to join in the conversation, because I know that Milton, besides being an architect and an educator, he's also a piano player and a painter. So he is also one of our interdisciplinary people. Would you like to make a comment or a question, Milton?
Sure, thank you. I'm sorry I've had to jump up and down. There's actually some construction taking place in my house right now, so I had to attend to that. But I do have a question, because architecture and music, and in many ways painting as well, is ineffable. There are no words for the experience directly. It's emotional, it's limbic, involves all the different parts of the brain that Gardner talks about and you're talking about synesthetically, for example. I think there's a bridge between articulating it consciously and being able to address it in a conscious way, and that unstatable, that ineffable side, and that's words. Because words are accessible to us, they're accessible to people who are experiencing what we do. So it's kind of a midpoint between experience and design on the one hand, and humanity's way of processing things. So I guess my question is, have you explored the realm of words adjectives, expressive poetry even, to help us relate our inner beings to what architecture is and what landscape is.
You mean a bit about literature? I mean, this. Have I understood the question? Maybe not. You mean
Well,
about
it's about the use of words and adjectives and poetry to access the experience in a way that is not the same as the emotional response, but may be something we can relate to and help ourselves understand what we're experiencing and help our clients tell us what they're experiencing.
Well, what I do is exploring Japanese architecture. I think that the way they explain architecture through words, I mean, the way they explain their senses or the sensory feelings is more or less what I want to explore. I have mentioned Marcel Proust. I haven't read in detail. This is one of the tasks because I think that is what I feel. I mean, the way you can describe exactly the feelings, the taste. I mean, what I try to explain with all the works is that I really feel the taste of the steel or the snow so I can put that words. So I don't know if this is what you mean, but it's very sometimes uncomfortable or embarrassing to explain because it is something very, very personal. So what I do is usually writing. I mean, I have my notebook and I try to translate that feelings with words. And that was a surprise to read these short paragraphs about the work of Marcel Proust, because I think that he's a master on that. I read that he was like 15 years writing in search of the past time. I don't remember in English the name. So I think that it's worth to explore that part and to connect it with music. And I feel that what you are asking me is what we need in architecture. I mean, in the classes of architectural projects, it's curious that from the first time you are asked for, I mean, the students are asked for a section and a plan, and we don't take like 10 or 5 minutes, maybe not with music. I mean, I use music because it's more abstract, and for me, I connect better to explain my feelings with music. Or, for example, if I started to know any of you, probably I will start to connect with a melody, not one that I have created. And I don't know how to explain your personality, but with a melody, I can describe it. So what you are asking me, I think it's quite important for architectural schools. Maybe all of us don't have that music skills, but maybe if we love music, we don't need to play it. I mean, you can go but it seems that we don't have time to speak about senses and feelings. I think that this is the problem that we have in our society. So it's not only about a discipline. I think that it is about values.
I agree. I think it's nicely said. The ability to express it in some form that someone else understands, that is less abstract, maybe more emotional or embodied in some way, is an opportunity to have a platform for agreement or disagreement, because then the intention is something that has been stated in a clear way. But you're right, it's a very difficult thing. I find it very difficult to do. My students find it hard when I ask them to do that, to relate words to architectural experience or musical experience. It's hard, but I think I think it's rich. I think with some persistence, we can get a lot out of it.
Yes, and I think it's also important that students are able to, and I also in our exercises, I always ask our students, and I really work a lot with different means, also like collage, and to explore atmospheres and also connecting to this kind of the in between the inner landscape and the outer world and the effect between both. But I always ask our students to write a short text to describe not just the concepts, but also the intention and what was done with the design, because it's important that we understand, that we find ways also to not to explain, but to articulate our creative process in a way that not that it loses ambiguity, but that it is able to communicate to the viewer what we are trying to transmit. So this is the reason why conceptual art needs some kind of explanation or a title or something, because if it's just all completely abstract, then we can create something incredible, but then we don't reach out to anyone, and then everything is lost. I would like our students to make a question, because we were talking about their projects before, and there are many ideas about mixing also the soundscape with the movements and also the idea, some more abstract and others more concrete. So I would be very interested in their questions.
So I would just start, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
So I have a question to Raquel. Are you aware of the emotions you have before you do that music? Because if I compare it maybe to dancing, there it's, you know, you have a kind of emotions through the music. You know, you already have the emotions given, so you just take these and then you transform it into kind of emotion. But you do it, you know, like you create the music, so you kind of have to be aware of, or is it just starting from nothing? I don't know. So that's,
yes, that is it is like automatic writing. So imagine like kind of meditation. Like every morning, you imagine that you start to write 3 pages and you don't judge you. So just give your mind free. It's true that when I start, I choose the harmony. So this is the start. So it is like you have said about dancing.
mm-hmm.
That suddenly you start to move and you don't know, one sound takes you to another moment and so on. And I also feel it inside my body. I experience, well, I got some classes of buto, very few, and of flamenco, and also belly dancing. So it is like I feel like the air and the movement, and this is how I play the next note. I don't know how to explain it. It's like something meditative, and suddenly many thoughts start. So I cannot call myself like composer. I don't feel like that, because something that happened to me, and that is why I record it, is that after playing, I could be playing 15 minutes. I don't remember what I have played. I only have like the taste or the feeling, but I'm not able to remember it. So this is how it happens. I think that it is like automatic writing, because it is what happening to me every morning. So probably to other musicians happen. So I don't know if it is related with zero individuals or just my experience. I don't know if I have answered your question. Maybe not.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, it's more like something that has to be said, but just in other words instead of words. So maybe it's something like that.
I think it's similar to dance. I mean, when some musicians started to play in the street and suddenly you join and start to dance, you don't know what is going to happen afterwards. I mean, if you don't know in advance the piece of music. So I think it's more about intuition, probably.
Raquel, I find it very interesting that you mentioned this, that after the performance you don't remember what you did, because this is also one of the reasons why I'm always insisting on the documentation, because I have the same experience. And I had some times, now I'm a bit more careful about this, but I had some times when I was teaching before in another city in Kaiserslautern, I would give the students this like instructions of what they were supposed to do. And I was very concentrated doing that. And as soon as I finished, I had completely forgotten everything I had said, because I was shaping everything in the moment. So it's always important to have things that record and because creativity can really work like that. You can be so deep into what you're thinking and creating at the same time that when you get out of that I don't know, mode or state, it's almost like a trance state that you get out and then you don't remember what happened because it was in another level of consciousness or of awareness. So documentation is always very, very important. So I think Johanna also wants to do a question.
Yeah, it's not really a specific question, but I think it's very interesting to think about how we experience spaces, not just in the way that maybe the people who designed them thought about, but I have in my mind this picture of an exhibition I went to years ago. And the thing I remember most is that I spent an hour sitting in one corner just because this whole atmosphere did something with my mind where I really had to sit there and just feel a mood that I can't even really explain. So I'm really curious about how we can try to design more in a way to not just think about one way people experience a place, but also create these spaces. Maybe similar with the music maybe, but also maybe other senses as well, that create these spaces where we just feel those, people are allowed to feel a space in a different way.
Well, I think that if we plan everything, I mean, a lot of stimuli and in a space, or we use a lot of neuroarchitectural strategies, I think that we can cut the creativity of people. I think that, for example, I come back again to Japanese. They're very smart with how they use the shadow, for example, and the colors, the textures. So you feel that you are smelling the forest and you are inside, a building. You are not outside. You feel outside, but you are inside. So I think that this kind of strategies to change the mood of people has to be very, how can I say, smart. Because otherwise it could be like, how can I say, a game park. I don't know how to explain it.
Overwhelming.
Sorry, something like that. So we have to give freedom to people. I'm not an expert on neuroarchitecture. As I've told you, I am learning myself. But I felt that for example, in Japan and also some architects in Vietnam. So they play with nature and with light, and I think that, and with materials, and they change the mood of people. Because if you feel at home and if you feel safe and you feel in the middle of a polluted city, for example, Saigon, I was living in Saigon, but you feel in the countryside. So this is a way to use neuroarchitecture strategies in favor of the mental well-being of people. I don't know if I have answered your question, but more or less. I think that there are invisible things that provoke a musician or provoke, as you described when you were in the exhibition, the change of mood. So look at Japanese, for example, because
I think that's really interesting. Also, this idea that we need to give people space to experience it in a different way. Because when I think about what I do my studies right now, it's mostly just we have to explain everything with like in a logic way that makes sense, to where we have different functions and have an like logical explanation for everything. And I find that so difficult sometimes because imagine how I would experience it, it doesn't make sense to everybody why these things seem like a good thing to me. So I think that's really an interesting topic to think about. Also keep in mind.
It could be like I don't know if you call it dichotomy or paradox between functionality in architecture and how you enjoy a space or how you feel. So sometimes if you are only thinking about square meters, for example, you are not going to think about the mobility of people. And this is quite related also with health. The kind of cities that we have created, we have seen in pandemics. So there is a difficult balance. I think also the project that I have shown you a project of Sejima Nishizawa. It has a lot of, there's a lot of space just to walk in a building. So if you think in energy efficiency, I mean, I am founder of Climate Change Architect Networks in the Spanish team. So for me, it is like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I love this kind of architecture, but if I think about energy efficiency or functionality, that is, maybe it's fine, maybe not. I don't know if I have answered.
I think Laura and Margaret would also like to make some questions.
Yes, I have another question to your personal design process. As you said, you do the improvisation. Do you record these improvisations, and how do you do the documentation with like a little bit of distance, a few hours later, a few days later? How do you deal with that?
Well, I started to do improvisation when I was 12 years old. and my neighbors and my relatives told me, what are you playing? It's quite hard what you are playing. So some years later, I started to record it, so I could have more than 500 or more than recordings. Some of them are variations. So what I did since like 5 or 6 years ago, it's I take my phone and just how can I say? I give it a title, just the first word that it happens in my mind when I finish. But once it happened, I mean, if I don't do anything else, I cannot connect with all the sensory experiences that I have explained you. Maybe when I listen, I don't realize that I'm myself. It's very strange because it's like when you listen to your voice and you don't recognize yourself, but I'm able to start to feel different things. So I think that the point is that you record, and after that, you write down, this is what I do, all that different lines of thought. That could be memories, that could be my case. I always connect with landscape or nature. I don't know why I do that. So this is, I wrote down and then I listen again. Also, for example, the colors, but without any logic. So I write, I think that it's similar to what architects do in the first stages of when you do a collage or you do a model, so you don't have to think so much. And after that, you analyze it. So this is what I do. When I do the audiovisual work is when I start to analyze and I say, this come back. And it's curious because if some of these exercises has helped me when I'm doing architectural projects. I haven't done myself, I mean, but when I was working for a competition and I feel blocked, I started to play. And then I record. I do all these steps. And then when I compare, for example, a model, or I compare some words that I have noted in this notebook, it's curious because everything could be connected with the music or with the feelings. So it is like the music could give me an answer to the question that I need for my project. But it doesn't mean that the video, the audiovisual video, is going to be useful itself for the client or for your teacher. This is the main misunderstanding that I see in the schools of architecture. That at the same time we are said that we are like an orchestra director, could be painters, but then we cannot use all these tools in the classes because we are asking for, or we are required for the final render in 2 weeks, so the game is different, and that is why documentation is important, because in an unexpected way you can find the answer of after 5 days of work. Maybe it's just a symbol. I show you this map of letters and symbols and so on. So I have found that in my mind or in some way unconscious, I could find a draft that is connected with the project. In an abstract way, this is something that I'm telling you now here, but this is not going that I'm going to tell to my boss or my colleague, but it helps me for the project. So documentation and step by step.
Thank you.
What Vito has asked me, just try to translate in words.
Margaret, I think you would also like to make a comment.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for sharing. It was really wonderful. Actually a PhD student at the Barcelona School of Architecture, and my research is on architecture and empathy, and also how synesthetic experience can communicate the ineffable. Anyway, my question. Oh, and also as I was listening to this presentation, I remembered reading somewhere that I can't remember who it was, but it's interesting. Apparently, we record memories, or memory is recorded in sort of the most permanent way when there's more than one senses involved. So when there's like a synesthetic event that has both, sound and music and tactility and smell. When there's like numerous, I guess, multimodal or cross-modal ways of experiencing the event, then it's recorded in a more lasting way and in a more intense way. So I just thought it was interesting when you were talking about memory. But my question to you is, or a couple questions, I guess they're kind of broad questions, but what are like some of the challenges that, zebra individuals, what are some of the challenges that are encountered in architectural space or in urban space? And have you thought about how architecture can support better zebra individuals?
Well, about the space architecture, I'm thinking about gifted in general, or just not only gifted children. I think that we need spaces to build curiosity. So, for example, for gifted people, I have read that it's not only for zebras. When we have like a kind of, how can I say, intellectual anorexia, or creativity anorexia, since we are very, very, very little. So we need many, many stimuli in the cities, or for example, that connection with nature. So this is something about gifted people, but I think that this is something about human. So I'm reading a bit about autism, many children that has autism and so on. So this is also related with the world that they are living. I mean, our senses are highlighted. I don't know how to say. This is hyperesthesia. So our cities could be a help for us. I mean, mainly because we are not taught how to control our senses. If we are thinking in a limit situation, we can save our lives, because imagine that you can listen many sounds more or less in the same level, or your accurate visual system. But in our daily life, it's difficult. I don't know if I am answering. I think that our cities are not conscious. I come from the Center for Conscious Design. So it's not only about, maybe we are more sensitive, I mean, zebras and so on. And that is why maybe some gifted people and zebra people prefer to stay at home, because we don't see, we get bored, or we get depressed. I mean, depression and anxiety is quite related with gifted people, because the brain, it's like got bored. Imagine that you have 3 or 4 lines of thought. These are many interests, and you need many stimuli. So especially children, I think it's very, very important to create schools with this stimuli. And it's great for the rest of the neurodiverse people. So it's not only about gifted, but what I mean is that we suffer more from anxiety or depression because of this, because we feel the colors, and this is something that we feel. So that is, I don't know if I have answered.
Raquel, I think that this is also
it's interesting that so there's a need for stimuli, so it's not enough.
Yeah, that is the word. Sorry for my Spanish. That is, but I think that it's not something for gifted people. I think that it might be for all humans, or for all children, because this is what we need. The more connections that you have in your brain, the more interest. I think that the more resilient you can be in future. So it's a way to build machines if we build these kind of concrete cities without any other stimuli, just all of us going in the linear way.
But is there such a thing as having too much stimuli, like being overstimulated? Because, for example, me personally, I sometimes suffer a lot when I'm exposed to too many, like, I don't know, digital billboards, and sometimes I have to rest for like a day. Like when I went to Tokyo, I remember I thought I was gonna have a seizure at one point or something. It was so intense. All the light stimuli also.
I think that it's smart stimuli, smart stimuli, or smart design, or more related with neuroscience and neuroarchitecture. I think that is the role of neuroarchitecture. So it's not like in one extreme or the other. And I think that neuroarchitecture has a great role on that, because otherwise it's like an amusement park. And yes, what you have described, I have been also in Tokyo and this kind of mega city, and also the sounds and all the lights and everything, you feel sometimes like you cannot orientate yourself, and also the lights and so on. So it's important to have that balance and that kind of smart stimuli, I think. Shadows, this is the language of architecture, I think. Materials. This is my opinion.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret, also for bringing this up, because some people who are gifted and also in the autism spectrum, especially with a heightened sense of aesthetics, have difficulties with overwhelm because of sensory integration issues. So, for example, when I travel to a place like Venice, which for me it's like, what an amusement park is good for someone like me, that makes me really, really happy. I know that it's very nice for me to have a break in the middle of the day and rest for 1 hour in a completely quiet, calm, and kind of cool place. And then I'm ready and happy to have more. But if I don't do that break at the end, like in the evening or something, I will probably be very happy and very excited, but I'm not able to sleep because I'm getting so many ideas and thinking about so many things. But at some point, then the bill comes and then I'm really in a bad mood. So I can understand what you mean with this, also Margaret, with the stimulation and the processing. But I think that sometimes some of this overwhelm can also be good for creativity. I think that we just need to think about creating spaces where we can give people with different needs the time and the space to process information and to process their creativity in their own way. I think that a lot of the problems we have is that we have too many regulations and we insist on putting things into very organized, specific, planned ways of how people should spend their time and modulate their habits, instead of trying to understand what actually works from a more natural and spontaneous way for each individual, because everybody has different needs.
I have an interesting fact about that overwhelming situation, because coincidentally today I read an article about a grocery store here in Stuttgart, and 2 times a week they offer a few hours for autistic people, where they lower the lightings and there is no music through speakers. So that's a project that recently started here in Stuttgart. So I found it very interesting to share that, because it's especially for people with neurodiversity. So yeah, that could be also an option.
Wonderful, Laura. Which story is this? I'm very curious.
I just read a few lines of this article today. So it's in Esslingen. It's a grocery shop, and they just announced that they have 2 times a week, a few hours especially for autistic people. And what they do to make it more comfortable for them. And also, for example, I never thought about temperature, but apparently autistic people are very sensitive to temperature changes. And so they developed a plan for them for the grocery shop, where they show where it's more cooler or more warmer than in other spaces, so they can prepare themselves for these little climate changes. So it's super interesting.
Very interesting, Laura. Thank you so much for sharing this. I will definitely look into it because I love Esslingen. it's a German town that it's very similar, like to a small Venice. It's very, very nice. Raquel, you wanted to bring some.
Yeah, just one comment about what we are speaking. I think that the stimuli is also silence. I mean, you can be overwhelmed about silence. I mean, I was quite overwhelmed when I am in a Zen garden. I mean, that kind of void of emptiness, this is another kind of stimuli. I think that we need also these spaces. So it's not always building or many effects. So sometimes it's just minimalism or maybe just nature. We need to nature in our cities. So I think that is, and what you mentioned about like the thermal experience, I think that we don't realize about that, but this affects to everybody. I mean, maybe people that has this kind of heightened sensitivity, but also to, I mean, if you are in a building and you started to feel cold, it could be the marvelous cathedral that you want to go. So I think that we can also use it as a strategy. I mean, because I was reading about this article now about thermal sensations, and they don't speak about gifted, just about people and neuroarchitecture and thermal experiences. So it is quite related to what you were saying, I think.
Thank you. Well, we are having a really, really interesting discussion and conversation. But we started already at 4 here, so maybe we will have now to finish. I just would like maybe to ask if there would be one final question or one final comment. Okay, maybe not. Well, Raquel, this was wonderful. Great pleasure to meet you and to get to know your work, and also really interesting to talk and to have a conversation about these topics. I think from my side personally, I felt very connected and could really resonate with many of the aspects you mentioned. And I'm also really happy that in this course and also for the channel, for the conversations, that we could start with a conversation on neurodiversity, because I think especially among creative people, this is something that we should talk more openly, also to get to know each other better, and how these things are connected to creativity. So thank you so much for sharing your work and sharing your experience with us.
Thank you all for listening, and I encourage you to explore your own inner creative processes and find your way. I think that, as Maria said, we all are different and special, so try to find your way and your connections. And thank you for the invitation. I'm also a student, self-taught, so I encourage you to put into practice neuroarchitecture. And thanks, Milton, for the questions and also being here. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for all my mistakes about neuroarchitecture and neurology. I'm learning, so thanks.
Thank you, Raquel, and thank you also, Milton and Margaret, for being here. And of course, thank you to the students for the participation. So, and this is the final conversation of this cycle, but we end with a wonderful talk. So thank you so much, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.